All right, the next video I'm going to scroll down, and this is going to address about the curriculum, and I'm also going to talk about degree plans and a little bit about computer requirements in this section. In general, our program is geared like all other healthcare programs where we have really three basic components or three groups or categories of components of our classes, or our curriculum I should say. There's our lecture classes, which are all online, 100% online. And there's our labs, where we give you hands-on experience in a simulated technical situation. If you're in a distant situation, this will be something that you work on an individual basis with somebody that's designated as a clinical supervisor for you. There's also lots of online components to the labs where you have to answer certain questions and demonstrate tasks, or demonstrate that you've done tasks in the clinical setting and whatnot. Then there's the practicum courses, where the state of Texas calls them practicum courses, but most people just call them clinicals. This is hands-on learning. It's really more or less kind of like an apprenticeship, basically, where you spend a lot of time interacting with patients in the medical facilities and helping to set up treatments and do all the stuff that you'll be training to do, basically. So it's really like live on-the-job training, basically. And actually, it turns out that the vast majority of your time spent in the curriculum is in the clinical stuff. You spend a lot more time in the clinics than you do working on classes and labs and stuff. So that's where you get most of your learning, just really kind of on-the-job training. And that averages to be about, there's give or take on this depending on the semester, but for the first couple of semesters it's about 2 days a week, and for the last few semesters it's about 3 full days a week, sometimes a little bit more depending on your circumstances in the semester. Okay, I'm going to scroll down a little bit and look at some of the requirements for our program. These are all kind of described in here. There's general education classes, which is mostly what I'm going to be talking about in this section. And here we have a list of degree requirements, so check these out through our hot links here. And breakdown of our classes. I want to talk a little bit about some of the details. I've already talked about math a little bit, so there's a list of math classes there. Basically, a college algebra kind of class is always acceptable. Those are things that people have access to out of state. Here at Amarillo College, we have something called contemporary math that in the last few years, or so last 10 years I guess it is or so, it's been revised to be a full credit class. And a lot of people in the Amarillo area ask me, is it better to take contemporary math or college algebra? Well, that kind of depends. If your long-term goal is to get a bachelor's degree, then I recommend taking college algebra, because college algebra is much more likely to be transferable as a degree math requirement for any bachelor's degree that you might want to get in whatever field of study you want to go into. A lot of people, after they get done with radiation therapy, maybe they want to move up into radiation therapy administration, so they might look at a business degree or something like that. So if you're looking to maybe eventually move up into a bachelor's degree, then college algebra is probably a better choice for you. If you're just looking at what is better math for radiation therapy information, then the contemporary math is probably a little bit more like the kind of math you would do in radiation therapy. But you know, if you kind of have to hedge your bets, I'd go with the college algebra just because of that transferability. There's a humanities and fine arts requirement. There's actually 2 different web pages with 2 sections filled with choices there as to classes that will fulfill those requirements, and any of those classes listed there, any one of those classes can work. The social and behavioral elective, there's again a list of classes there, but if you can pick and choose, I would recommend psychology, because I think it's going to be a little more valuable with respect to being a radiation therapist. And because it's more valuable, at least right now, our health division sciences may require me to change this a little bit, but right now I actually give like a bonus point if you take general psychology and make an A in that class. Likewise, speech classes, there's a list of speech classes there. There's only a handful of speech classes like basic speech or business and professional speaking. The one I prefer is interpersonal communications, because that class is more like the kinds of communication that you have with patients. It's a very interpersonal thing. You don't get up in front of a group of patients and make a speech. You relate to them on a one-on-one basis, and that's more what interpersonal communications is about. So likewise, as I'm able to do at least right now anyway, I offer bonus point for people that take interpersonal communication and make an A in that class. It's worth mentioning, like with the humanities and fine arts and social behavioral science, stuff like that, there is, I believe, one class called Minority Studies that is listed in both of those sections. At least it was last time I looked. Maybe it's still there. I haven't. I should probably look to be sure. But if there is any class that is in both of these different categories of like fine arts and social behavioral sciences, you cannot take that one class to satisfy two requirements. You can't double dip, so to speak. So it either would count as the humanities and fine arts requirement or the social and behavioral science requirement, not as both of them. First keyword for this section is the word phone, as in short for telephone or cell phone. So again, that keyword is phone. Something else worth noting, we do have like an Anatomy and Physiology 1 requirement. The content for Anatomy and Physiology 2 is embedded now in other classes throughout our curriculum in radiation therapy, so you don't have to take Anatomy and Physiology 2. That said, the A&P 1 that you take, Anatomy and Physiology 1, has to be Anatomy and Physiology 1. You can't take like some colleges may offer just kind of a broad-based one semester Human Anatomy and Physiology. You can't take that and transfer that because the content of that one class may have skipped over some of the stuff that is taught in our one semester Human Anatomy and Physiology 1. So you really have to take Human Anatomy and Physiology 1, and we give you Human A&P 2. If you take Human Anatomy and Physiology 1 at another college, then that should be transferable, but it has to be Human A&P 1, not just a one semester kind of covering 2 semesters worth of content kind of thing. Also worth noting, medical terminology. Our medical terminology requirement is a 3-semester credit hour course. Some colleges may offer it as like a 2 or 1 semester credit hour class. If that's the case, that can be difficult to transfer as well. You need to take a 3-semester medical terminology course. The next keyword is the word frog, F-R-O-G, frog. Why not? By the way, it's worth noting that general education classes like English, math, humanities, stuff like this, A&P, those classes can be taken at any time. Most people take most, if not all, their general education classes ahead of time, as the more of those classes that you take, as you'll find out as we look through the selection process, the more of those classes you take, the better, and the better grades you make in those classes, the better your chances are of being accepted into any kind of competitive program that we might have. So for instance, it kind of boils down to where, like, if you take freshman composition, freshman English, and you make an A, you get X number of points. If you make a B, you get a smaller number of points, and so on. So the more of those classes that you take, and the better grade that you make in those classes, the better your chances are of being accepted into the program. It's also worth noting that for the full-length program, the 21-month program, we need you to complete all of your general education requirements no later than the 2nd semester of the program, and the end of the 1st semester of the program if you're going for the advanced standing curriculum as a radiographer. That being the case, that probably won't be much of an issue because most people have taken all those classes anyway ahead of time. Okay, so if we look down here, scroll a little bit further on down, we've got a degree plan for the full-length program. Now, the classes that are RADT or RADR, those classes are taken really in this sequence, in these semesters. But the general education classes can be taken at any time. We just kind of have to have something mapped out. That's why it's written like this. So you don't have to take the general education classes in this particular order, in these particular semesters and stuff. We just have this mapped out. So the more of these general education classes you take ahead of time, like language, philosophy, culture, those kinds of things, social behavioral science, if you want to take those ahead of time, more power to you. Again, the more of those you take ahead of time, the better your chances probably of being accepted into the program. But this is kind of the outlook for the curriculum, the way we have it mapped out. Now, it's worth mentioning that the last few semesters of the program, when there's no more general education classes to be done, you might be lulled into a false sense of security into thinking, wow, there's just not a whole lot of semester credit hours going on, and there's not. The good news with that is that there's not as much to pay for, so that's kind of good. The lower the tuition is going to be with fewer credit hours that you take. But it's worth mentioning that these semesters, you're going to be really, really busy. Again, in these semesters, you're going to be involved in class and clinic about 30 to 32 hours a week, not including studying. So it's disproportionate to the number of credit hours that you have, that you're getting credit for. By the way, I'm going to try to make some changes to kind of stretch these out a little bit, to spread them out a little bit so there's not 10 here and 5 there, but it's a little bit more evenly distributed. But nonetheless, the looks are very deceiving. It doesn't look like you're going to be busy in the last few semesters. You will be. So you need to plan accordingly with respect to work or financial aid or anything along those lines. So that's something worth mentioning. Oh, kind of also worth mentioning, these classes that you have in the last few semesters are the most time-demanding and challenging classes that we have. So again, there's kind of been this rule of thumb you've probably heard that you should spend 2 hours outside of class for every hour credit the class is. My experience was when I was in school that I didn't really have to spend that much time. But my students tell me that it's pretty much those last few semesters that you really kind of do have to pay attention to that rule of thumb and put in that much time. It really is a pretty time demanding curriculum. I mean, we're talking about working with radiation therapy and working with cancer. We want to make sure you get it right. And our program has a really, really good track record with respect to passing the national certification exam. As you probably have read, 97% of our students in the time that I've been teaching, and I hope to keep this consistent over time, but our students have done really, really well of passing the registry exam on the first attempt. The national average is like in the low to mid 80 percentile range, so we're way above average all the time, and we aim to keep it that way. Then the next page is what the degree plan would look like for the advanced standing program. So if you're a registered radiographer in X-ray tech, this is kind of more like what you'll be looking at in here. So once you get accepted into the program, you got 4 semesters, and that's what it more or less is going to look like. Again, I'm going to try to kind of make this to where we get it up to 6 semester credit hours instead of 5. I'm not sure if I'm going to be successful at that, but that might help with financial aid and stuff. Then this next part is computer requirements. And this gives you, actually, a lot of this is from our college website with the computer requirements. And with respect to like office productivity, we say we recommend, Microsoft Word and stuff like that. There are ways to be able to get access to emulation programs that can be compatible with Microsoft Word and Microsoft PowerPoint. So there may be ways to be able to do that. I understand that we've got some access to some services that allow the students to be able to do that. So you may not have to purchase that, but if you've got it, then that's all the more power to you. What you do have to have is all this stuff up here. So take a look at that, because that's what you have to be able to access our program and be able to participate in the program fully. And our last keyword for this section is going to be the keyword nose, like plain as the nose on your face.